Robert, how you doing today, mate?
Hey, doing fine, thank you. Really happy to be here. It's my first LinkedIn live,
Ooh.
so not the first live ever, but
hmm
really glad to be here and pretty sure that we will have a very interesting talk about some stuff.
Yeah, man. So we're going to talk about today. We are both, so want to say hello to everyone. If you're joining in, it will be a casual conversation, just talking about the different conversations Robert has. So Robert and I are both leadership instructors. We're a company called Combat Ready. We are based in Estonia. That's in Eastern Europe, if you're looking at the map. And we help people with leadership. We help them solve their leadership issues, and we have a great framework. We have very solid tools, and we're using a lot of the tools that have been pioneered by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin in their book Extreme Ownership. We are the official echelon front partners in Europe, carrying out the consulting training services on their behalf. We're very, very proud to have that association. It means a lot to be associated with Jocko and Leif and the whole echelon front team. And Robert is one of the instructors. Now, Robert has a podcast here in Estonia on a network called Delfi, and he talks to different national security influencers. I don't know if we can say the word influencer for national security. It sounds like a very important topic, national security, and then influencer sounds like, I dance on TikTok. However, nevertheless, as the meaning of the word evolves, influencer, people who influence something. So, Robert, tell us a bit about your podcast, how it started. How did you come to this?
Yeah, so if you roughly translate the name into English, I guess it would be something like a special operation operator tales or whatever, something like that. In Estonian, it's Eriväelase jutud, so it's a bit more fluent. But actually, the way that I started it, for me, it kind of just happened. The first season was hosted by Remo, the CEO of Combat Ready, and I was one of the guests for the show. And when they started discussing about the possibility to start the second season, then Remo wasn't too keen to continue this because of various reasons. And then I kind of started flirting with the idea of maybe I should do it myself, but I've never done anything like this before, and I was really I just didn't know how should I make this decision because it would be swimming in very very cold water for me. And I kind of slightly mentioned this to Remo, and all of a sudden what happened was that the Delfi guys who were responsible for the show were already inviting me to meetings and were like, hey, what's up, dude? And I was like, well, I guess I got to do it then. So for me, it kind of just happened. But I'm actually super happy that it happened the way it did, because it pushed me into something that I've never done before. And I must say that I really enjoy it. And the overall idea is to actually talk with different people, especially from the armed services, but also from the police, and then the various people that influence the security of Estonia at the moment or have done this in the past. So the guests for the show, I can choose them, of course, and I make agreements with them. And I just want to find interesting people that have done something very interesting in the past or are influencing or steering the national security at the moment. So it varies from, for example, from people who have started the special forces in Estonia up to the Minister of Defense. So it varies. There's a lot of different people that come to the show and they have their own experience. And I really kind of like to build up each show so that I can talk about their journey. And then, of course, talk about the present a bit more, but I also really like to talk about the past because it gives you a better understanding of who the people are.
Indeed. And we will get to this, the different guests that you've had. That's our goal here, to hear some of their experiences, some of the stories that were told in Estonian, and we can unlock them into the unsecret language of English. But you were reflecting on that this podcast started with our co-founder and CEO Remo Oyesta, and Remo was definitely like, "Oh, you want to do it? Go and do it." And it's a very much an example of the decentralized style that we're aiming for with Combat Ready. We're practicing what we preach, and work, effort, also reward, also notoriety or in the spotlight. This should also be decentralized and shouldn't be all about the leader. So I can completely understand. First of all, Remo, he's trying to choose the top priority. What's the best for the company? What's the best for personally, okay, himself? And how are we getting out there, spreading our word, getting some reach? And then the second is going to be, okay, how can I then get others to help me along this road? And very much his style. You want it? Go. Good. Oh, you're doing it. Yes. Good. And I think that part of the story where it's very much like, oh, guess what? You're doing it. Good. Is I was thinking the other day about like why I work with Combat Ready. And and why I mean, okay, I have these skills, I can learn with the company, but I enjoy the structure that it brings and that I'm not an independent person. And I think I'm coming to this idea that I'm not so great as an independent person, like just to do my own things and to, yes, I know I've got, but just will I actually make it happen where that little bit of structure that a team can provide with a great leader, great leadership as well, is really what I need. And, you know, there's many opportunities, many chances in my own life as well, where maybe I wouldn't have done that thing unless someone was pushing me, helping me, guiding me. And it sounds like very similar here. You know, maybe we wouldn't have had these opportunities if it wasn't for the structure and the team of Combat Ready.
Yeah,
So,
I also have the same feeling that why I want to work with people is so my background mainly comes from the army and different tactical units, and there's always people around you. You always have team members and so on. So I still am looking for this team feeling, and this is why I like working in a team. I can't do things individually. I just don't enjoy it that much. I guess I enjoy the times with myself sometimes as well. But if you want to work, then the most efficient way, as it is for you, is working in a team.
It is. I would say it's not my default. It's something I've had to learn. I'm an only child who grew up on their own without no one around me. So my default is to keep it to myself, but it's that understanding, that learning, that innovating and adapting that where I gets through this thick skull eventually, like, duh, when you work with people, things get better and you don't isolate yourself. So, Robert, we've done this first series, 10 episodes of this. You spoke about the various sorts of people you've had across not only national defense, government, police, and people who have founded special forces all the way up to the highest levels of our national defense as well. So I guess it's up to you. Where do you want to start? Let's discuss maybe someone's story or something you want to start with. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, I think that we can start actually with Remo, the CEO of Combat Ready. He was my first guest for my season, and why I wanted to do it like this, because I think I wasn't his first guest. I think it was a second or something. But regardless, I wanted to do my first show with him. First, because I wanted to feel myself comfortable, because I know him. We go way back with the army and everything, and it was a bit easier for me than kick off with the interviews. And the other thing is that I basically took the show over from him, so I thought that it would be a nice gesture to actually have the first episode with him. And with him, it was of course, like each individual is interesting. They have their own stories, but with Remo, of course, it's well, you know him. He likes to talk, and he has a lot going on in his head, and you know, whatever comes out from there he's very interesting. So we talked about his past and like the present as well, and he has a very interesting past. And it's just not the army, but for example, he used to be a professional poker player. So there's various different like angles that have shaped him into what he is today, and this all has benefit, you know, to the future now.
Yeah, so it's almost a meme inside of Combat Ready that it's a new week. Oh, Remo's got a new diagram to demonstrate to us exactly what he's thinking right now. He's a lot going on in there, and he's always diagramming, writing, showing, trying to demonstrate to us his vision, and it's very important. And at some stage you could be like, oh, another mind map of how we're organizing things, and that's not the that's obviously a bit of a joke there and we're having a laugh, but what is so good is that he's always trying to communicate, always trying to get out what is in his head, and that's what we need to do as leaders. Patrick Lencioni coined the term that CEOs need to be chief reminding officers, CROs.
Yeah.
All the job of the leader to do is just to keep saying it and saying it and saying it, and when you think you've said it, you got to say it more. And it's good, it's good that it's a meme status in our company that, oh, here's another mind map Remo's got for us, because that means he's always trying to communicate.
Yeah. And what's really interesting with him, it's usually when we go to conduct courses or whatever, then either one of us tells the story of our background. Then if I do it, then Remo can usually say that, yeah, it's basically the same as Robert. Or if he does it first, then I can say that it's basically the same as him. Because we worked in the army together in Milram, blah, blah, blah. So we're always like kind of hopped into the same teams after the army. But what's really interesting is, and of course that's normal and natural that people are different. But with him, like me, for example, if I do my shows, my podcast shows, then, and I always need to do it, I have to prepare myself. So I always have those interviews like scripted out basically, because I want to be prepared. I look at the background of the people, find some interesting facts that I want to talk about, so on and so on. But he doesn't. And it was really interesting that so we both served in the special forces, and this is where we met. And in order to get to serve in the special forces, then you have to go through selection. And I asked him about how did he prepare himself for selection. Me personally, I think I stopped everything. So I focused on the selection. I started focusing on it like 3 months before it happened. I just focused on that, trained, blah, blah, blah. And he was just like, well, I just showed up. Basically, I was like, oh, okay. So that was really interesting. And it was the same with his shows, that he doesn't have to prepare. He can, kind of drive everything while talking. And that's really interesting for me, that that we're so different. And I think that this goes back to where he used to be a poker player, because they always have to be ready to think, on the spot and really fast. So that was really interesting.
That's a good one. It's interesting. Okay, planning here. I mean, what is this lesson? And I think the lesson in this part of the story is you need to understand how much planning you need, and either is fine. So Remo could clearly get by, and he's not just winging it. We don't want to be like, oh, he just gets up there and wings it and does it. No, he's got the plan is already here. But some of us, like me, definitely, I can't have the plan up here. Now, I can enter a podcast like this without a strict plan because I've done so many hundreds of hours of long podcasts. So there's going to be some, so the opposite spectrum there will be you, new to podcasts and a very planning, analytical person. So, okay, that makes sense. You're going to do planning for that podcast. Now, maybe you could do a little less planning. Maybe next time it's not scripted. Maybe next season it's a page of notes, for example, scribbled on a page. So I think it's that self-awareness to know how much planning do you need is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but we can continue from there. So the first episode was with Remo, and then we had a few episodes with some of the present operators from Special Forces. One is the K Commando, the police special intervention unit.
And SWAT team, one, right?
Well, we can't actually call them SWAT. If we call
equivalent
them SWAT,
of SWAT. Like if people know what a SWAT team is.
We have SWAT as well, but they're called the Kiirageerijad.
Oh,
so
okay.
Different, yeah. So the way that they have identified themselves is a SIU, so Special Intervention Unit. So it's a bit more than SWAT, so to speak.
Okay, that's what you did. Yeah,
more different. Yeah.
That's what you did, more than that. Okay, right.
Yeah. I was
so SWAT team is like, yo, something's happening downtown. We got to go now and do it.
Yeah.
Whereas
So
I
the SWAT
understand you
team,
would be more strategic.
yes, they're patrolling in the city as police officers, and if shit goes down, pardon my language, then they just show up and start doing things because they always have their gear in their vehicles and so on. But their like everyday job is to actually look out for the security of the people while patrolling and reacting to different situations. And yeah, and the other operator was from of course, the Army Special Forces unit where me and Remo came from. And it was really, again, really enjoyable for me because I got to go back to my roots, basically. And this is what, excuse me, this is what I've always said, that the Special Forces actually made me who I am today. And of course,
I mean, go into that. What does that mean? Who were you before, and what was this? What made you jump in then?
So the Special Forces, it takes a lot from you in that sense that you have to be super focused and you have to sacrifice a lot. You have to sacrifice a lot of time. You have to sacrifice a lot of effort. You have to study a lot. And this always comes, you know, from your family time, time with your friends, and so on. But what I mean that it made me who I am today is that it taught me a lot about me, what I'm actually capable of. Because before people put you in this frame that you have to do something that you've never done before and you don't even know if you're capable of. And if you do it, then you understand, oh, okay, that wasn't the limit for me. I thought it was. So it just keeps pushing your boundaries out all the time. And of course, it gives you this ability to, well, first react to whatever situations because you have this very good training. It doesn't matter, is it, I don't know, hand-to-hand combat, is it medicine, is it whatever, planning, intelligence, whatever. So it gives you first different qualifications, but it also like mentally prepares you to do very, very tough things. So this is what I mean, that it made me who I am, that push my boundaries. I know what I'm capable of. And of course you have those special skills.
What, I guess, so you're already in the regular military then. So what is it just that ability, like, I want to push myself, I want to go further, I think I haven't done enough in this or not done enough, like, but you know, I feel like I could go further than what's in this regular military?
I think so. That, like, the guys who join the special forces, they just want to do something more, because the regular army, like, it's not a bad thing. We need regular army as well, but there are those types of people that want to push themselves, because it already, the mere fact that they say that we will test the living F out of you if you want to join the unit, and then this just kind of pops up there. Okay, so they think I can't do it. I can, or at least I'll go and see if I can. This is one thing, but the other thing actually is that it's just interesting because you get to like learn a lot. You get to work together with various special forces from around the world. You get to see the world. It's interesting. Not so many people can do it, and so on and so on. There's not so many people in Estonia that have been connected with the special forces. And it doesn't matter if it's the police or the army. So it's always this small community of people.
Right. Let's bring that story back to the start of the special forces, because I feel there's an interesting story there. Now, Remo was one of the first members and helped to really set up what special forces was. So we take it back almost 30 years or whatever, something like that. Walls come down, where Estonia 2.0, it's a free country once more. And so many institutions in this country had to be rebuilt from the ground up or indeed created. And that is what makes Estonia so interesting, I can say, for me, because I was able to, in my life before combat ready, I was able to build an institution from the ground up. And that was the art form and institution of stand-up comedy. Didn't exist in Estonia in 2010, wasn't a thing. My friends and I, we built that up over 10 years. And Why, what's appealing about this small, cold country in the north of Europe with high inflation? Well, you get these opportunities that still exist to build something from scratch. I certainly lived through that. And hearing the stories of Remo, he lived that, it wasn't just being a Navy SEAL, it was building the institution of the special forces from the ground up. And that process of, like, it's not clear at first. Like, how do you build a special forces? How do you build a company? And I can
Yeah.
see that in the way that Remo is mentoring us today, he's taking those lessons that they had to bump into walls and try and fail and try again. And now we're using those same lessons to build combat ready. What are some of those thoughts from your discussions?
Yeah, but before that, I think it's good to talk about one of the other guests that I had in my show.
Okay, yeah.
His name is Andrei Ambros, and he's actually the first guy that started the Estonian Special Operations Forces in the mid-90s. And he just happened to be in the right place at the right time, basically. So he was an instructor for the Defense League. And actually the first, it was called the SOG in the beginning, the Special Forces Group. And it was 94 when the first order was signed by the Defense League, actually, that they will have a Special Forces group, kind of. And it was interesting because when the Russians left, or like the Soviet Union kind of left Estonia, then it also was that we had to start building everything up again. Some of the units, I believe, that stayed here, the Soviet units didn't leave all at once. But then they had this idea that, hey, we need our own Special Forces unit. And the guy actually was just an instructor for the Defense League. And this is where it came up to that he started the first unit in the Defense League first. And then at one point, let me see if I can see. Yeah, it was a few years later in 96 when the unit was then taken over from the Defense League to the Defense Forces. And this is like the start of the Special Forces in Estonia. And these stories are really interesting. Like, how did stuff happen in the 90s?
Yeah.
It just happened.
Yeah, it just happened.
Yeah, exactly. They had no plan. They had no nothing. Basically, they started doing stuff. They started training themselves. They started like training others as instructors and just kind of building everything up.
Just to make it clear for me, was it sort of the first inklings or thoughts? Did it come from command or did it come from this guy?
This guy, basically, yeah.
This guy, he was like, yo, we need that. And then eventually command signed off on, all right, do something or other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was interesting. And well, the 90s in Estonia were a very gray era. People were able to do whatever they want. It was kind of the same when I heard the stories from the older operators from K Commando, police unit. I mean, that was crazy what they did during the 90s. If we would do the same things today, we would go to jail directly.
Do you mean like risk or activities or without implicating anyone? What can you tell us?
Exactly. Like, basically, well, one of the stories was that they were following some criminals, and they used like machine guns to do that. Like, they were driving around Nõmme with machine guns out of the windows and stuff like that. You just can't do shit like that anymore. Unfortunately, it would be funny, but it did, like, the 90s and the gray areas, they were different. But yeah, again, Mr. Ambros, very interesting to talk with him, and I will definitely have another episode with him because well, the SOG had a really unhappy ending, I would say. It was
that first Special Forces attempt.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So the guy who started the unit was in training in the States, and then another guy was put in charge for the unit, and they, for whatever reason, thought that it would be awesome to go and rob a guy who's selling a tractor. But it went south, so some of the dudes were shot, and for that reason, the unit was shut down.
Okay, so the initial unit, they were, I mean, such wild, I mean, literal wild east, wild west, but they decided that wasn't part of, robbing the tractor guy was not part of their official duties, as I
No,
understand.
no,
There's some
no.
sort of
They just
side hustle, you might call it these
yeah,
days.
exactly. And it's another like leadership question, I would say, because Mr. Ambrose, when he was in training, he wasn't in
Mm,
charge of the unit, and another guy was put in charge,
mm.
was a sergeant, and that guy just had an idea that hey, let's go rob that dude, and well, he was shot. So
So when
you
your
know,
leadership starts to make some questionable decisions, that's a tough choice. Okay, I've got this big idea. We need this. And then, I mean, Mr. Ambrose must be like he probably gets it. Like, you're gonna do what? And
yeah.
not just like, oh,
Well, well,
you're a bunch of
well,
fools.
he actually uh he didn't know anything about it.
Okay.
He understood what had happened when it was already over, and then basically was called and said that hey, do you know what happened? You know, and yeah, the unit was shut down. He had an offer to start as a commander in another unit, but he didn't want to continue with like like with the basis of what had happened. So he chose that he will not continue.
So they had to reform essentially. There was the SOT, sorry. And okay, everything went down, the S went down, as they say. The whole thing gets messed up, and it's one of those situations where a team has just got to be disbanded. You know, there's so many issues there. It's sort of got to be disbanded, but then something has to eventually reform.
Yeah,
So how does it start to or some sort of special
it
forces
was
start to reform?
it took a really long time. It's like special forces themselves were assigned. I think it took like more than 10 years, definitely,
Hmm.
when they started forming. Oh yeah, okay. So I was serving as a conscript, and it was 2007 or 8 when I remember that the uh, the chief of special forces at the moment, the commander of the special forces command, is or he came to the unit where I served as a conscript to kind of pep talk people that hey, come join our unit, stuff like that. But at that time it was like, what's this guy talking about?
Hmm.
Like no one really understood what the special forces was, and it kind of didn't ring a bell for me that I want to join them.
Hmm.
So it took about 10 years when they started forming the unit again.
So
But again,
we fast forward to what year? 2004, 2005, is it? Or what are
no,
we?
even more. That's
Even more.
2000, maybe 7, 6, something like that.
Okay. This
Yeah.
this reminds me of a story that an incident that Jocko tells a lot on his Jocko podcast. That these days, I don't know, maybe you can hear about Navy SEALs everywhere. There's the movies. Every former operator has a podcast. We can watch YouTube videos, and conscripts dudes are going in knowing what it's about. They're from their kids. They're going, I know I want to be the SEAL. I want to be the special operator, training, preparing. It's well known. But he speaks of a lot of like back in the day of 95, no one knew what did you have to do to be a SEAL? It was like a mysterious wizardry thing. And it sounds like it was the same. Okay, everything happens 10 years later in Estonia. So for you
Mm.
guys, it's like, why didn't you know? Well, we weren't watching the YouTube. Every operator didn't have a podcast. There
Mm.
wasn't this information out there about what this was.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, I had the option to know in a very detailed manner what awaits me. And I must say that at some point it was even worse than not knowing. Because if you're already tired, like super tired, mentally and
Mm,
physically, and then you start calculating, okay, I have this, I have this, I have this waiting for me, I have this, it just sucks really bad. So sometimes it's better not to know.
yeah.
But there are not so many TV shows in Estonia that give you an overview of the selection process. There is one, Pealtnägija, one of their hosts took part.
Okay. It's like Estonian 60 Minutes did a story. That's about it,
Yeah,
right?
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And the host, well, he lasted for about 72 hours, maybe, not even that, and he dropped out. But regardless, that gave you an overview of what waits you. But now it's different again. And I don't want to sound like an old man saying that, oh, the youth is not what it used to be. It just happens. It just happens over time that the society changes a lot. So it's the same now in Estonia, actually, with the Special Forces selection. When I joined the unit, I had to go through selection that lasted for 14 days. And for 14 days, the instructors made everything in their power to make you quit, basically. And now it's just 5 days or 6 days, 6 days. Because soldiers now just are unable to go through the selection for 14 days. Too many dropouts. And they have, of course, built up the system so that the selection process is shorter, but the basic course that follows is basically like a 7-month selection process. It's going to be kicking the nuts. You're going to learn a lot, but it will still show if you're up to what you want to do here, or if you're up to becoming an operator.
I think that's an excellent point about growing a team, and as a team grows over time. So if you want to, I don't know, you take any startup unicorn, take Bolt. If you're one of the first 5 guys, okay, maybe it wasn't so hard to get on the team. I want to say you had to know them. They're going to work together. But now if you want to get into Bolt and let's say higher level, it's very hard, right? You got to be at the top of your game to be a unicorn. And I will also hesitate about people thinking that, oh, it's easier to get it now. Well, did you get it right at the beginning? It was a hard as balls selection at the beginning. It was just ground people into the dirt. So yes, good. We're finding it's hard, but was that necessarily the best? Oh, it was harder back in the day. Okay.
It's just the way it was done.
Is that what we're trying to get out as well? Because
if we compare the first selections that were held, then these were structured way different than they were in let's say in the middle part of, or like I don't know, 5-7 years back. Because the first they didn't have a structure, so they basically just did something.
Yeah.
And then when they started cooperating with other units, like the Green Berets from the U.S. Army, for example, then some of the instructors or some of the officers and the NCOs went through their selection process just to see how it works. And basically they took that as a structure and built our own selection around that. So it became a really structured way of doing things. And does it necessarily, did it necessarily have to be what it was? From my point of view, I have been an instructor for the selection and I have passed the selection. I say yes, because it definitely shows the dedication of the candidates, but also it shows you like what are they capable of, because the things that they kind of test are similar to what they have to start doing anyway when they are in the unit as an operator. So I'd say that yes, these 2 weeks were necessary because they just show you a lot of the candidates overall. It gives you really, really like in-depth idea of who you're dealing with.
I think this idea of selection is something that regular businesses can really learn from. To think of it as the idea of selection. Sure. Where any regular company, of course, has some sort of procedure, interviews, I don't know, tests. Now it's almost a meme status of, oh, this company had 5 rounds of interviews and 6 rounds, so many rounds. They wanted me to this and wanted to do that. And
homework.
Homework. And okay. And so we're not sort of saying, yes, so to reframe it as the idea of it's a selection, not this sort of interview, endless process, that we need to do some things that we're going to test the mettle of the person. And it's not just sort of like, can you come up with that coding project? But I know, for example, when we're onboarding people into combat ready, one of them we look at is like, how fast did you start to do those tasks? Did you wait a day, or did you go wait 3 days? Or how come you waited 3 days? Was it 1 day or 2 hours you started? That there is some sort of selection process and that it's a little bit hard, but it's manageable. And it's not just, the selection process isn't just sitting down with Remo and having a conversation 3 times and then talking through something. There are actual activities to do. And I think this is, I think this is something where business can sort of reframe their idea. With Comedy Estonia, selection that I had. I found it so important that if I was hiring a project manager that had to manage a bunch of comedians, I wanted to know about their project management experience. Of course, I wanted to know about, how can they do the job, but it's very important. How would they interact with the team? And so part of my selection process was always, you've got to go just hang out at shows. And I'm not even, there's no job. You just hang out. And I want to
Mm.
see what you're doing. And I don't sort of clue them into this. I'm like, hey, just come and hang out, talk to people. And, how do they mingle and interact with everyone? Do they, hey, can I help out? Can I do something? And nothing's like a, pass or fail. Oh, they didn't offer to help, so they're out. It's not it. So not only can I observe them from a detached perspective, I was then able to the next day speak to the comedians and be like, yo, Fred, the, conscript, our guy who we may take him as project manager. What did you think of Fred? You had a chance to observe him. And that also meant that I had buy-in from the rest of the team. It wasn't just me as a leader going, yo, here's the new hire. That they felt like, my senior guys, at least, let's say, felt like they had some buy-in like that. As I understand as well with special forces selection, it's not just the chief going, you're in. Like, actually, the team has to kind of approve as well.
So the end is that every member has to say yes. It's usually what it is. Of course, there might be some, derivations, but usually what it is that everyone has to say yes, he's a good candidate. Let's continue with the guy.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's not something that I think is so typical in business. Like, it's more just like, here's the new person, or maybe a quick observation, does the person get in? So we got to balance these things. Of course, we can't, management. Okay, leadership needs to make a decision, but if we're enforcing these things on our people, that can also have the opposite effect too.
Sure, I agree. Sorry.
Not at all. We're good. We're good. So anyway, while Robert's doing that, we want to thank you all. If you're watching the stream, Robert and I are doing this live right now on LinkedIn. We're hopefully going to have I presume LinkedIn lets me keep the replay for later. If you want to ask us some questions, put them into the comments afterwards. We're going to go for about another 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something like that. Keep talking. But we're happy to take any questions. Put them in the comments. We'll absolutely reply to you there. And thank you very much for joining in. We appreciate the middle of the day. Look at Robert. He's such a busy guy. He's got deals. He's doing things.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for, we'll go for a little longer, but thanks for joining in. So, Special Forces.
Yeah, Special Forces was one of the kind of areas that I wanted to touch with the my podcast. And the other kind of area that I really wanted to touch was actually the like the high political stuff that goes on in the European Union level at the moment. And why is that we have a few politicians who have been a very loud Estonian voice in the European Parliament and in Europe overall. And one of them is, of course, the former Chief of Defense, retired General Riho Terras, who is a member of the European Parliament. And so it's really interesting with him because he has always been this type of a person who brings out the themes that are lacking, attention, for example. So he actually started to talk about the agriculture in the European Parliament.
Sorry, the agriculture, sorry?
Yeah.
Okay, explain that. Tell us, what is...
I don't know how he managed or how he started with that, but we have all those farmers, in Estonia and everywhere who basically grow our food.
Sure.
But the markets change so much all the time that they really don't earn any profit. So many of them quit being a farmer and start doing some other stuff. But who grows our food then? Or even if that happens, then we have to start purchasing our food from outside the EU. So he was the voice for the farmers and worked to make their lives a bit better. but I don't know, did their lives become better? Did they get more attention? I guess they did in some areas at least. But when the war in Ukraine started, then Mr. Terras started to be the voice to talk about the importance of what's going on there. And it was the same with the Minister of Defense, Mr. Pevkur. What I understood was that the Western European countries don't really realize the essence of war in Ukraine at the moment. And the Minister of Defense said that now they start to understand. And it was really interesting also what Mr. Terras brought out, that I believe it was the Spanish member of the European Parliament who said that let's not call the conflict in Ukraine war because my people at home don't understand it as war or something like that. So I was like, what do you mean? But, you know, I understand that they're so far away from the actual war that they don't think about that. So it was really interesting to talk with them, and also how they have then used their positions and basically educate the Western Europe of what actually happens, and educate them to more support Ukraine in that war and help them win somehow. Like, for example, Estonians were the ones who started the project to get 1,000 rounds of ammunition for the so what was it now? So anyway, 1,000 rounds for the army. No, 1,000, 1,000,000 rounds. Sorry, 1,000,000 rounds. And they wanted to deliver that by I think it was the end of February this year. They were a bit late, but they were able to deliver like 1.2 million rounds. So they, like the Estonians, have been a really loud voice in Europe. And of course, we've had our negative feedback as well. If you remember, or I don't know if you've read it, but Politico, one of the magazines in Europe, they started then, they wrote an article about how Estonia is giving away their old army equipment to Ukraine, and then basically asks the EU to reimburse new ones for us. So they started throwing this crap on us and on our politicians. And I asked, of course, about that, who was behind all that? They didn't want to say. But they have their own ideas who, but the speculation is that some of the bigger European countries who have not supported Ukraine that much are behind that article, and they just wanted to shut the Estonians up, that, you know, be quiet, do your own thing if you want, but don't shout. So it's interesting how those games up there also happen. And again, this is a very good indicator of who should be representing us. Should we have those humble dudes who never say nothing and just, you know, follow around? Or actually those guys who are like, hey, that's my job, I'll do it, I don't care.
It is very interesting, and that Mr. Terras was able, that we've got this person who understands intimately the effects of the military and the effects of the armed forces, and then speaking eloquently at the highest levels in Europe, educating, building relationships. I mean, it's easy to dunk on Spain and be like, oh, you don't want to call it a war, no. You know, but it's a matter of education. It's not about just going, why are you guys so like that? And that he's taking that time, that the war isn't just run. And so just as he's so strategic, first of all, before the war, he was able to go like, yo, if we can't feed ourselves in Europe, we've got a bigger problem than guns and bullets and tanks and stuff like that. So he's already, and no doubt that's coming from his experience leading men, that, okay, if I don't feed my men, all the bullets in the world won't help. If we don't feed our country and our citizens and our union, all the defenses in the world won't help. That he's able to think so strategically and long term about that. In the last, actually, I'm going to take a side note here, an off ramp for a moment, Robert, in the last 10 minutes, because we did have a little question in the chat here. So I thought we can just go live to that one. Ike is giving some. So she had one for me, one for you. And I can go the one for me first. Ike asks, my experience is in growing Comedy Estonia, growing artists, growing creative people. What can he bring from the stand-up career to present and rating the career change? So first of all, I would say moving from being a stand-up comedian, being a promoter, being a talent manager, my job was to lead talented people, to lead creative people. And the first thing I've learned is that the fundamentals are the same. The implementation may have been different. You can't speak to a comedian about discipline. They don't quite want to hear it phrased in that way, but we've got to find other ways. We don't, as comedians, we're not going to sit around and do strategic planning about how our whole group is moving forward. But nevertheless, that's still important that we know that we do that we communicate that. So I had to develop more indirect methods, had to develop methods for making sure that my whole group was strategically aligned with our common goal, which was to grow stand-up comedy, grow the company, grow the art form, make sure that we've all got careers. I couldn't sit us down. Hey guys, we're having 2 days worth of workshops with PowerPoint and things. Comedians aren't going to listen to that, but we still had to do it. And what do I say? Do I bring from my stand-up career to the present here? I think it's the idea that we can do a lot in Estonia. To touch on what we talked on before, it's still a land of opportunity. America's a land of big opportunity, yes, but we're still developing these systems in Estonia. We're still always evolving. So I was able and fortunate and privileged to be in the place to be able to grow and develop a whole new art form in stand-up comedy. And that was very interesting. And now I'm in the privileged position to be able to grow and develop the skills of leadership and formalize these and bring these to more people and show them how we can do that. And maybe I can bring a little bit more entertainment. Maybe I can bring a different perspective than all my fine fellows who have served, and I respect that. And maybe I can present a different angle on it as well. So however, it's still a career change. It's still something different. I was building comedy for 10, 12 years, and I'm 44 years of age. And to have any sort of career change is still a little scary, still a little different. I take this as very long-term and very strategic. The work that I'm doing with Combat Ready, I'm going to be doing this 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I don't see this ending. So I take it that when anyone's done one business, when you start again or start a different business, it feels like there's a massive boulder and it takes a long time. That boulder, you're used to that boulder rolling. I'm used to having the whole machine of Comedy Estonia, and as the captain, just be able to gentle nudge this way, gentle nudge that way. Hey, good, we're back on course, no problem, things are good. But when you're back starting afresh, you have this massive boulder to push. And it can be absolutely very frustrating to have to try to get the momentum going again. And it's coming back to having that team around me. That actually in this team, I'm not the CEO, and I specifically don't want to be the CEO. Or don't want to be the leader, because I'm here to learn. I maybe learn all that I could from myself running my own company. Great. If I'm top, then who's helping me? So I'm very happy to now work in this team of people who have very different experiences than me. So Rob, the question from Ike was talking about military guys often can be known. They have a stereotype about guys in the military, strong and silent type, get the job done. It's not necessarily our skills of being a raving extrovert that might get you far in the military, but that's not quite it. So tell us about that transition for you.
Again, I have to go back to the Special Forces and the sentence that it made me who I am. Now, the former chief of the Special Forces had a very good sentence. And he said that the Special Forces operator is first a diplomat and second a soldier. And of course, we had to communicate with a lot of different people from various positions, ranks, army, civilian, whatever. So I'd say that it taught me a lot how to communicate. So that whatever it was, the strong silent type or whatever, strict silent type,
Yeah.
yes, that side is there, absolutely. But I know that if you want to do things the way that we do, train, perform, and so on, then just can't be like that. So I'd say that the special forces for me, it grew my character as well as a performer, I'd say, because you had to, I don't know, maintain your discipline, put yourself in different situations, imagine those situations, plan for them, blah blah blah. So it wasn't actually that difficult for me. What was difficult for me was that we were very secretive of our service in the special forces. And what was really difficult for me was like coming out from the hiding, and it took time to kind of to make me understand that if I want to continue with this, I have to do it. So it took time for me to actually feel comfortable, but now I really think that doesn't matter anymore because I'm out of the hiding, 100%. And I'm really proud of it, actually. I'm really, really proud of that, of my background and the other guys who have served, because it's important that we have people like that. And now I just feel that we have the opportunity to change the society in a different angle, but it's still kind of the same. We're still, in a way, serving our own people. So
you're that's a great point at the end. You're still serving the nation, and there's a different way. It's not just about the any organization. It's not just about some guy on the front line shooting a gun. Okay, we need the leadership, we need the support, we need the education of all those involved.
And one of the like key points for me with the podcast is education. To talk about the stuff that actually happens in the army and in the national security overall, and people who listen, then they get educated because they get a different angle of information that they might not have heard before.
I like that as well. And this brings me back to my thoughts about why am I enjoying working with Combat Ready? My experience is as a talent manager. So understanding creativity, being an artist myself, but also developing artists. And I think my particular set of skills is getting someone like you show up at the Comedy Estonia open mic. I can get you from there to performing your first solo hour, who knows, 3, 4, 5 years later, right? I got a lot of experience developing that talent. And I've become, over that time, having the whole machine of Comedy Estonia, very attuned to who's got the talent and who hasn't, who has the talent, but maybe it's just packaged up a bit weird. And I like the weird kids. Maybe if you're a fan of Comedy Estonia, for example, I mean, it doesn't get any weirder than my man Maiduk. And Maiduk's now doing his hour. Maiduk's doing the R kiosk. So there's an example of someone who, you can look and go, oh, what's going on with Maiduk? That's interesting. But identifying the talent that's underneath and then giving that talent the opportunity to grow. And I see that in Combat Ready. I see a lot of talent. I see a lot of experience. And I'm really enjoying giving and helping you guys along this way to express yourself and bringing that out.
Yeah, exactly. She wanted to bring out that you have that, like the question was before, that what did you bring or take from the experience, yes. Right? But exactly the ability to perform, for example, and why I even kind of started getting interested in podcast was because you wanted to do a podcast with me. So when I started recording my first episodes in with Delfi, then I asked you to come and hang around and see how I'm doing, if you have any tips, how to make stuff better. So it's always about support. And this is, again, what's really important in our team in Combat Ready is that we have all that different various experience, and you have yours. And I'm really super happy that you're a part of the team, and especially because you haven't served in the army. You have your own perspective, you have your own point of view on things, and this makes the mixture a lot richer. I always bring out you as an example if I'm in courses.
And that makes me think about the way, I mean, what would I do? How do I help? How could I do something? How can I contribute? And I think my plan is it's helped me understand how I want to mentor people, which is I want to just present the opportunities. So, like, hey, to everyone in Combat Ready, let's do a podcast. I don't know. What are you talking about? I'll hear about your history. I don't care, right? The point is, I don't have this laid out script plan for how I would develop any one artist. What I need to do is just stick that person in various places and see what comes out. So, number one, let's just do a podcast. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Then I get a feel, and then you get a feel, and you're like, oh, okay, it's a little interesting. And then you start to give me some feedback. Lewis, I really like doing this part of it, or I prefer them on Zoom, or I prefer them this, or I'd really like to do some more the speaking and communicating is good, but I'd really like to do it live instead. And then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Then I can adjust. So mentorship is always a two-way street. To go in with the open mind can very much help. So, and that's the energy that I get back from all you guys too.
Yeah, it's all about teamwork.
It is about teamwork, makes the dream work. All right, Robert, we are coming to the top of the hour. So,
Yeah.
my friend, we'll wrap it up. Any final thoughts? We're good before we say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for being interested in my podcast stuff. And I must say that I am really, really happy that I started this journey, and I will not stop. I already have an agreement to have another season, and we will start recording late August. So it's gonna happen again, and I won't shut up. I'll do it for as long as people are interested and I have listeners. So keep up the good work, and thanks for having me.
Beautiful. It's about consistency. Just keep going. I love it. So I want to thank everyone who was listening in. If you listen to the replay, if you got some more thoughts, you can put them in the comments. You can also reach out to us. You can find Robert and myself on this LinkedIn platform here. But wherever it is, reach out. We're going to talk to you. We are instructors with Combat Ready. We help teams with their leadership. We're very proud to be part of that team. My name is Louis Zezeran, and we are going to see you next time. Bye for now.
Adios.